To become who you are meant to be, you must first commit psychological suicide. Transformation isn't a beautiful rebirth. It's the agonizing terror of watching your old self bleed out. Dare to step into the abyss today, because what survives at the very end will shatter your reality. Have you ever stood entirely alone in the dead of night, staring into a mirror, and felt a sudden, suffocating terror? Not a supernatural dread, but something far more devastating, the terror of recognizing the stranger staring back at you. In the haunting silence of a dimly lit room, the glass ceases to be a mere reflective surface. It becomes a merciless judge. On this side of the glass stands your naked, unvarnished reality, a version of you steeped in stagnation, weighed down by toxic routines, shattered promises, and a mind slowly decaying in its own comfort zone. But lurking on the other side, buried deep within the recesses of your psyche, is the phantom of your ideal self. This is the sharpest, most disciplined, and fiercely free version of who you were always meant to be. The chasm between these two reflections is not just a matter of time or space. It is an abyss of silent torment, a black hole that continuously devours your self-worth. The agonizing realization of this gap is the true genesis of all metamorphosis. But what if I told you that every attempt you have ever made to cross this abyss was deliberately designed to make you fail? What if the very methods you have trusted to save you are the exact chains binding you to your misery? Myth Erendor warmly welcomes you and all our viewers to a space where illusions are shattered. If you are ready to stop running from your own reflection and confront the raw, unedited truth of what it actually takes to profoundly change your life, please hit that subscribe button right now. Your subscription is the vital lifeblood that fuels this channel, giving us the immense motivation to continue producing these deep, uncompromising videos for you in the future. Now let us step off the edge and fall together into the uncomfortable truth. When we carry the crushing weight of this mirror-induced agony and desperately search for a cure, we blindly walk into the most colossal trap ever set by the modern self-help industry. For decades, we have been spoon-fed a lethal misconception, the lie that self-transformation is fundamentally a process of addition. They sell you the illusion that you simply need to add a 5 a.m. wake-up routine, add a 10-page reading habit, add a punishing diet, or sprinkle some toxic positivity over your morning coffee. This multi-billion-dollar machine operates on the premise of handing you shiny new bricks to stack upon your existing foundation. Yet the brutal, unapologetic truths of psychology and biology scream the exact opposite. Transformation is never about painting over a house that is actively collapsing. At its most authentic core, metamorphosis is a calculated act of destruction. You can never breathe life into a new iteration of yourself unless you are willing to pick up a sledgehammer and violently shatter the old structures, the archaic belief systems, and the comforting habits that have forged your current identity. Change does not begin with learning. It begins with the ruthless, agonizing process of unlearning. To truly grasp why this act of psychological demolition is so excruciatingly difficult, why 92% of people who set ambitious goals fail spectacularly within mere weeks, we must peer into the biological prison that holds your mind captive. Allow me to introduce you to your greatest enemy, who ironically happens to be your most fiercely loyal protector, homeostasis. In the realm of biology, homeostasis is the natural, unyielding gravitational pull of any living system to maintain a stable, familiar internal environment, regardless of the chaos raging outside. It is the reason your body temperature hovers safely at 37 degrees. However, the exact same mechanism governs your psychological landscape. The human brain is a greedy, energy-devouring machine. To conserve fuel, it relentlessly automates your behaviors, thoughts, and emotional responses into predictable, deeply grooved patterns. To your brain, familiar is completely synonymous with safe. It genuinely does not care whether that familiar pattern is eating a nutritious apple or chain-smoking half a pack of cigarettes. while mindlessly scrolling through a glowing screen until 3 a.m. As long as you have survived the loop, your brain categorizes the behavior as a life-preserving state. The very second you decide to pivot, the moment you throw away the cigarette, turn off the phone to sleep early, or lace up your running shoes, you are actively launching an assault on this internal equilibrium. In that precise instant, your brain does not applaud your noble attempt at self-improvement. Instead, it perceives your action as a direct lethal threat to your survival. Deep within the temporal lobe of your brain lies the amygdala, an ancient primitive radar system designed to process fear and trigger alarms. It is an evolutionary relic from the Stone Age, an era when any sudden deviation from the norm usually meant you were about to be slaughtered by a predator. When you attempt to break a toxic habit, today your amygdala cannot differentiate between your effort to cut out sugar and the existential threat of being hunted by a saber-toothed tiger. It instantly equates the disruption of homeostasis with impending death. It floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline, drowning your body in an overwhelming cocktail of stress, anxiety, restlessness, and a nameless panic. Your brain is essentially screaming that you are in danger and must return to what is known immediately. This is precisely why your internal resistance feels so brutal, so violent, and so physically exhausting. You are not merely wrestling with a lack of willpower. You are going to war against millions of years of human evolution. When you look at transformation through this biological lens, you must entirely redefine your relationship with pain. Think about that moment when you sit at your desk, desperately trying to focus instead of seeking cheap dopamine, and you feel a suffocating, unbearable itch spreading through your chest. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the agonizing friction between the person you currently are and the action you are trying to execute. The vast majority of people reach this threshold of discomfort surrender and falsely interpret the pain as a signal that they are failing. But through the lens of neurobiology, that very discomfort is the sacred manifestation of neuroplasticity occurring in real time. Imagine your old destructive habits as a massive 8-lane superhighway in your brain where signals fly at the speed of light with absolutely zero friction. In stark contrast, the new behavior you are trying to cultivate is nothing more than a faint, overgrown dirt path hidden in a dense, dark jungle. The profound pain, the agonizing restlessness, and the mental exhaustion you feel when trying to change is the literal physical sound of those massive old neural connections being torn apart. It is the grueling mechanical friction of you taking a machete to the dense underbrush of your mind to carve out an entirely new neural pathway. Discomfort is not a red flag. It is the sole biological proof that your metamorphosis is actually happening. If you do not feel as though your nervous system is being stretched to the point of snapping, you are simply walking in circles inside your cage. Accepting this specific agonizing pain as a normal physiological requirement is the first crucial swing of the hammer required to shatter the illusionary mirror and walk out of your biological prison. Yet wielding that hammer to shatter the mirror brings us face to face with an even darker tribulation, the agonizing grief of watching who you used to be bleed out on the floor. We are obsessed with the romanticized aesthetics of a rebirth, imagining the phoenix rising gloriously from the ashes, but we deliberately turn a blind eye to the visceral, suffocating terror of burning alive to produce those very ashes. If metamorphosis is an act of destruction, then the structure you are actively demolishing is your own ego. The ego is not merely a manifestation of arrogance. It is the intricate, invisible architecture of your entire identity. It is the sum total of every narrative you have ever constructed to survive your childhood, every coping mechanism you have adopted to navigate heartbreak, and every excuse you have meticulously engineered to justify your current mediocrity. Your ego is the master storyteller of your life, and its primary directive is to keep the narrative consistent even if that narrative is actively destroying you. When you initiate profound change, you are not just altering a routine, you are committing psychological suicide of the old self. This is why the resistance you encounter goes far beyond the biological panic of your amygdala. It delves into a profound existential grief. You must understand that we fall deeply, perversely in love with our own suffering. There is a twisted, intoxicating warmth in the familiar embrace of our victimhood, in the predictable sting of our failures, and in the comfortable, heavy blanket of our depression. To cure yourself means stepping out into the freezing unknown, entirely naked, stripped of the comforting stories that explained why you were stuck. If you are no longer the victim of your circumstances, if you are no longer the person who just has bad genetics or just has terrible luck, who are you? The sheer gravity of that question is enough to paralyze the strongest among us. To transform is to become an orphan of your own history. It requires you to sit beside the deathbed of the person you have been for decades and watch them pass away. You will mourn for your toxic habits because at one point in your life those habits were the only things keeping you safe from a world that felt too heavy to bear. That mindless scrolling, that emotional eating, that chronic procrastination, they were not born out of malice. They were born as distorted shields, primitive armor forged by a younger, more frightened version of you who simply did not know any better. To dismantle them is to leave yourself entirely defenseless. It is an act of supreme vulnerability. This phase of the transformation cannot be intellectualized or bypassed through sheer willpower. You must allow yourself to feel the devastating loss of your old identity. You must wade through the heavy, suffocating swamp of grief, acknowledging that a piece of you is dying so that another might breathe. Most people retreat precisely at this juncture. They look at the dying embers of their old self, they feel the biting cold of the unknown, and they rush back to resuscitate the corpse. They choose the familiar hell over the unfamiliar heaven simply because they know the names of the demons in their current hell. But if you have the fortitude to stand your ground, to let the old self expire, you will initiate the most profound alchemy known to the human spirit, the transmutation of trauma into power. Once that old identity is finally reduced to ash, you are not instantly reborn. Instead, you are thrust violently into a terrifying, barren wasteland where absolutely nothing exists. Psychologists refer to this desolate landscape as the liminal space, but those who have survived it know it simply as the void. This is the agonizing purgatory between who you were and who you are struggling to become. The old neural pathways have been severely damaged, rendering your past behaviors repulsive and hollow, yet the new neural pathways are still too fragile, too unformed to provide you with any sense of comfort or automaticity. You are suspended in psychological zero gravity. It is here in this suffocating silence that the true battle for your soul is waged. The void is characterized by a profound, echoing isolation. As your vibration shifts and your tolerance for your past toxicity evaporates, the world around you begins to thin out. The friends who only connected with you over shared misery, superficial gossip, or numbing escapism will suddenly feel like absolute strangers. The environments that used to offer you solace will suddenly feel energetically draining. You will find yourself sitting alone on a Friday night, staring at a blank wall, feeling an excruciating craving not for a substance but for the comforting noise of your old life. The human mind despises a vacuum. Without the constant drip of cheap dopamine that used to dictate your days, your brain will begin to hallucinate. It will dredge up every buried insecurity, every suppressed trauma, and every whisper of self-doubt you have ever tried to outrun. Without your usual distractions, Your inner demons will finally have the quiet room they need to sit across from you and speak. Navigating the abyss requires a terrifying surrender to the emptiness. You cannot rush the void. You cannot fill it with new, healthier distractions because distraction itself is the enemy of integration. You must learn to sit completely still in the agonizing quiet. You must allow the echoes of your past to wash over you without reacting. This is the ultimate crucible of self-discipline. Not the discipline to force yourself to work, but the discipline to restrain yourself from reaching back to the past when the loneliness threatens to crush your chest. In the void, time seems to stretch into eternity. Weeks will pass where you feel as though you are making absolutely no progress, where you feel completely numb, utterly disconnected from both your past and your future. But beneath the surface of this perceived nothingness, monumental architectural work is occurring. In the dark, in the silence, your nervous system is slowly rewiring its core baseline. It is learning for the very first time how to regulate itself without the intervention of external pacifiers. By enduring the raw, unmedicated reality of the abyss, you are proving to your deepest subconscious that you no longer need to be rescued. It is only within this suffocating emptiness, when every distraction has been stripped away, that the genuine construction of a relentless new identity can finally commence. This is the stage where the mainstream self-help industry rushes back in, eager to sell you a shiny new checklist of habits, but we must violently reject their superficial blueprints. True transformation is never built upon the fragile, fluctuating foundation of motivation. Motivation is a fleeting emotional weather pattern. It is a chemical whisper that vanishes the moment the sky grows dark and the wind begins to howl. If you attempt to build your new life on how you feel, your architecture will collapse the moment you inevitably wake up exhausted. Instead, you must forge an iron core built entirely upon the cold, unyielding bedrock of standards. A standard is not something you wish to do. It is the uncompromising baseline of who you are. It is a fundamental shift in your internal language from "I want to read more" to "I am the kind of person who honors my intellect," from "I need to go to the gym" to "I refuse to inhabit a body that is weaker than my spirit." This shift is the genesis of an entirely new psychological operating system. Action must precede feeling. You do not wait for the desire to act. You execute the action with absolute ruthlessness until the desire eventually catches up. Every time you honor a promise you make to yourself, no matter how microscopically small, you are casting a vote for your new identity. You are physically laying down the myelin sheath over those new faint dirt paths in your brain, thickening them into a highway of competence. However, this construction phase requires a radical redefinition of discipline. We have been conditioned to view discipline as a form of self-flagellation, a punishment we inflict upon ourselves for not being good enough. We use it as a whip to beat our rebellious minds into submission. But authentic, lasting discipline is the exact opposite. It is the highest, most profound manifestation of self-love. It is the realization that you love your future self so fiercely that you are willing to endure the discomfort of the present moment to ensure their survival. When you drag yourself out of a warm bed at dawn, you are not punishing your body. You are fiercely protecting your potential. You are building an internal sanctuary that no external chaos can ever breach. This architecture requires you to be ruthlessly intentional with your environment, your inputs, and the sacred energy of your attention. You must curate your reality like a museum, allowing only the elements that strictly align with your highest standard to enter the gallery. It is a slow, methodical, and often deeply unglamorous process of laying one heavy stone upon another day after day in total obscurity. But as the structure rises, a profound shift occurs. The sheer gravity of your new actions begins to pull your mindset into permanent alignment. As the scaffolding of this new identity hardens into steel, you must confront the ultimate sobering reality of this transformation. The war is never truly over. The greatest, most lethal delusion of self-mastery is the belief in a finish line, the naive assumption that one day you will wake up and the demons will have simply vanished, that homeostasis will have finally surrendered. But biology does not surrender. It only sleeps. The gravitational pull of your old toxic baseline is a primal force of nature, patiently waiting in the shadows of your subconscious for a moment of weakness, an unexpected tragedy, or a subtle crack in your discipline. Mastery is not the absence of this gravitational pull, it is the daily, unrelenting choice to defy it. Transformation is an eternal vigil. It requires you to stand guard at the gates of your mind until the very last breath leaves your lungs. You must adopt the mindset of a warrior tending a garden. Your sword is never sheathed, even as you cultivate the flowers of your new life. There will be days when the phantom of your old self returns, whispering sweet, seductive lies about the comfort of your former chains. There will be moments when the sheer exhaustion of holding yourself to an exalted standard makes you want to drop to your knees and surrender to the mediocrity that surrounds you. In those defining, terrifying moments, you must draw upon the immense power you forged in the dark depths of the void. You must remember the agony of the suffocating mirror, the profound grief of your ego's death, and the astronomical price you paid to drag yourself out of the abyss. You do not get to keep what you have built simply because you built it once. You only get to keep what you are willing to aggressively defend every single day. When you finally return to that dimly lit room, and stand before the mirror once more, the glass no longer reflects a stranger steeped in stagnation. It reflects a battle-scarred architect, a sovereign entity who dared to dismantle their own biological prison and survive the destruction of their own ego. The chasm between who you are and your ideal self has not been completely eradicated because the ideal self continuously evolves and moves further ahead, but the chasm is no longer a black hole of torment. It is a bridge forged of iron discipline, paved with the quiet dignity of kept promises. You are no longer running from the reflection. You are locking eyes with it, sharing a silent, profound understanding of the brutal sacrifices required to stand tall in this reality. The journey of profound change is a solitary path, demanding everything you have and everything you thought you were, but it is the only path that leads out of the dark. Myth. Erendor deeply thanks you for walking this harrowing, uncompromising path with us today. If these words have shaken the foundations of your illusion and ignited a fire in your core, do not let this moment pass into memory. Hit that subscribe button, stand your ground, and join our community of those who refuse to remain prisoners of their own comfort. Until next time, keep wielding the hammer guard your newly forged reality and never ever apologize for the fire it takes to transform your life. Conclusion. The alchemy of transformation. True transformation is not a glamorous, instantaneous rebirth. It is a brutal, solitary war waged against your own biology, history, and comfort. It demands the terrifying willingness to let your old toxic ego die violently, stripping away the comforting excuses and familiar victimhood that once kept you psychologically safe. This necessary destruction plunges you into the void, a liminal space of agonizing isolation where the old self has turned to ash, yet the new self remains unformed. Here in the suffocating silence, true strength is forged not through new distractions, but through an absolute, terrifying surrender to the emptiness. From this barren wasteland, you must manually construct a relentless, new identity built not on the fleeting illusion of motivation, but on cold, unyielding standards. Discipline shifts from being a tool of self-punishment into the highest, most profound manifestation of self-love, a daily practice of keeping microscopic promises to your future self. Yet the sobering reality of this alchemy is that the battle is never truly won. Human biology never surrenders to change, it merely sleeps. To achieve self-mastery is to maintain an eternal vigil, aggressively defending the new reality you have built every single day. Ultimately, personal evolution is the conscious, relentless choice to endure the freezing discomfort of growth rather than returning to the familiar, suffocating hell of stagnation. The profound lesson: authentic, lasting change cannot be built upon how you feel. Motivation is a fragile emotional weather pattern that will inevitably betray you. The deepest truth of self-mastery is that action must always precede feeling, and true discipline is not a whip used to beat yourself into submission, but a fierce, protective shield forged out of love for your own potential. To heal and evolve, you must be entirely willing to grieve the death of who you used to be and brave the terrifying emptiness of the unknown without rushing to numb the pain. How to apply this to your life today? Shift your internal architecture. Stop relying on the phrase, "I want to." Replace it with, "I am." Do not say, "I want to be healthy." Say, "I am the standard of physical resilience." Anchor your daily actions to a non-negotiable identity rather than a temporary desire. Survive the void daily. When you cut out a toxic habit, whether it is mindless scrolling, emotional eating, or complaining, you will inevitably hit a wall of intense boredom and anxiety. Instead of replacing it with a new distraction, force yourself to sit in the quiet. Let your nervous system naturally recalibrate to the absence of cheap dopamine. Execute without emotion. Wake up and perform your required tasks, whether you feel inspired or completely exhausted. Treat your daily commitments not as choices, but as concrete bricks you are laying to build the fortress of your new mind. Curate your environment. Treat your attention as sacred energy. Ruthlessly eliminate the media, relationships, and environments that drag you back to your old biological baseline. Question for the community: what is one old habit or comforting excuse that you are currently trying to leave behind in the void? Please share your perspective in the comment section below so we can all learn from and support each other's journeys. If this message has ignited a fire within you, please hit the subscribe button to support the channel and give us the driving force to create more powerful content for you.